AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of her choice of bridesmaids. So, this is going to be a long one because there's a lot of history here, and honestly, I don't know if I'm overreacting or not. I, 24F, have a younger sister, Mia, 22F, who is getting married in about 6 months. Our family is close, but there's been some tension over the years between Mia and me, mainly because of how she treats my opinions and feelings as if they don't matter. I've tried to brush it off in the past, but the recent events have pushed me to the edge. A little background. Our parents divorced when we were young, and while I've always been close with my dad, Mia got really close to our mom. I get along with my mom too, but Mia tends to go along with her ideas more, which has led to me feeling left out or judged in family situations. She's generally sweet, but she can be extremely stubborn and has a habit of making people feel guilty for disagreeing with her. The main issue revolves around her bridesmaids. When she first asked me to be her maid of honor, I was thrilled. I really wanted to support her and be involved in this major part of her life. But then she told me her bridesmaids list, and I was shocked. She had invited 3 girls from her college friend group, all of whom I barely know, and completely left me out of the process of choosing or even suggesting any of my friends. I asked her why she didn't include any of my friends, and she said she wanted her wedding to reflect her life right now, not mine. I tried to accept that, but it stung. Then came a next blow. She asked me to help organize some pre-wedding events. I suggested some compromises, like maybe splitting the duties so everyone has a fair say, but she insisted that everything had to go her way. I tried to help with the bachelorette party planning, but every idea I brought up was shot down in favor of her friend's suggestions. I didn't argue. I just stopped contributing because I felt my input wasn't valued. A couple of weeks ago, she sent me a group chat message introducing her bridesmaids and telling me we should all bond before the wedding. One of the girls immediately asked me, very casually, what my favorite college was or what my hobbies were. I tried to answer politely, but I quickly realized none of them had any real interest in me. They were just going along with Mia's plans. It felt incredibly isolating. I told Mia I didn't feel comfortable pretending to be friends with people I barely know and that I didn't want to be a fake part of her wedding party. She got upset and said I was overreacting and that I was being selfish. The final straw happened last weekend. Mia invited me to a dress fitting with her bridesmaids. I agreed, thinking maybe I could at least see the process and support her. When I got there, her friends immediately started excluding me from conversations, joking about inside stories I didn't know, and even making subtle comments about how I never really hang out with them. I felt humiliated and completely out of place. Mia didn't notice or pretended not to notice and kept thanking her friends for their help. I left early, and we had a huge argument afterward. I told her I felt like she was prioritizing her friends over her own sister, and she accused me of being jealous and controlling. After that, I made the decision to not participate in the wedding at all. I told her I would attend as a guest, but I couldn't be a maid of honor, and I didn't want to be part of any events where I'd feel invisible or forced to pretend to be close with her friends. My parents and some family members are trying to convince me to reconsider, saying I'll regret it if I miss these moments. My friends are split. Some say I'm right for setting boundaries, while others think I'm overreacting and should just suck it up for my sister's big day. I haven't spoken to Mia since I told her, and I'm not sure what our relationship will be like afterward. Part of me feels guilty for walking away from such an important event in her life, but another part feels like if I go along, I'll be miserable and resentful for years. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to be part of my sister's wedding because of how she's treating me and her choice of bridesmaids. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It helps the content grow and motivates me to create even more great videos. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any new uploads. By the way, I'm curious, when do you usually watch my videos? While working, studying, or just relaxing at home? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you for your support. AITA for refusing to help my sister after she ruined my wedding plans. I, 28F, have always been very close with my sister, Megan, 26F. We grew up in a relatively tight-knit family, and until recently, I would have said that we were inseparable. Megan has always had a flair for dramatics and a tendency to exaggerate, but I brushed it off as part of her personality. That being said, I also have a strong sense of boundaries, and I value my personal space and independence. So here's what happened. I've been engaged to my fiancé, Ethan, 30M, for 2 years, and we finally set a wedding date for this past summer. The planning process was a roller coaster, but I thought I had everything under control. I decided very early on that I wanted a small, intimate wedding, about 50 guests at most. I didn't want it to be some over-the-top event, mainly because I'm not comfortable being the center of attention for hours on end, and Ethan felt the same. We picked a small venue, booked a caterer, and sent out the invitations accordingly. Here's where Megan comes in. Megan is the type who thrives on attention, and I guess she felt like a small wedding was beneath her. She called me about 3 months before the wedding, saying she was hurt that I didn't include some of her friends. I tried to explain gently that we simply didn't have the space or budget and that it wasn't personal. She got really defensive and said that I was being selfish and that she deserved to celebrate with us. I tried reasoning with her, but she hung up. Things escalated when she showed up at my bridal shower uninvited, bringing along 2 of her friends I had never met. She claimed they were her plus ones because she felt left out. The bridal shower was relatively small, maybe 20 people, and she basically turned it into her own party, trying to get everyone to play games she brought, and even trying to rewrite the toast I had planned with my maid of honor. I politely asked her to respect the plans, but she acted offended and stormed out when no one sided with her. At this point, I was stressed but still tried to salvage the relationship. I thought maybe giving her some leeway at the wedding itself might help. Then came the big blow. 2 weeks before the wedding, she called me in tears and said she had no one to help her with her dress and hair, and she needed me to take a day off work to drive her to fittings and help her pick out a hair and makeup team. I explained that I was already overwhelmed with final wedding preparations and that her hair and dress were her responsibility, not mine. She broke down and accused me of being heartless and never thinking about anyone but myself. Fast forward to the wedding day. Megan showed up late with a completely different outfit than the one she had promised, claiming that the boutique messed up and refused to apologize. She also decided that instead of sitting quietly, she would stand near the altar during the ceremony, whispering comments to Ethan's family and loudly asking if she could take pictures with me mid-ceremony. My bridesmaids tried to handle it, but she was persistent. I ended up having to ask her to sit down, which she loudly refused. Eventually, my dad escorted her to a back table, but the scene really upset a lot of guests, and Ethan was furious. The worst part was the reception. Megan had taken it upon herself to organize a surprise performance with her friends she had brought to the bridal shower. None of it was rehearsed, and it was painfully awkward. She also tried to cut in during speeches and made offhand comments about how small and boring the wedding was. Ethan and I were mortified, and our families were trying to hide their reactions, but it was obvious everyone was uncomfortable. After the wedding, Megan sent me a long text saying that I had ruined our relationship and that I was a terrible sister for not helping her with basic wedding support. I didn't reply at first because I was too shocked and upset. When I finally responded, I explained calmly that I had done my best to include her, but that I could not control her choices or her expectations. I also reminded her that she had refused help earlier and created drama during the shower and wedding itself. She hasn't spoken to me since, and my parents are now involved, saying I should apologize to her to mend the family bond. Here's where I feel conflicted. My parents think I'm being too rigid and not sisterly enough, and part of me wonders if I overreacted. But at the same time, Megan's behavior before and during the wedding was out of line, and it really did impact the day negatively. I also feel like I have the right to set boundaries, especially around something as personal as my wedding. AITA for refusing to help my sister and for enforcing boundaries, even though it has caused a family rift. Character count, 6,347 if you want. I can expand it slightly to hit closer to 7,000 characters with more drama and internal monologue, making it feel even more like a viral Reddit post. Do you want me to do that? AITA for refusing to let my sister stay with me after she caused problems at my wedding. 28F. have always been close with my younger sister, Megan, 25F, but the past few years have been strained. For context, Megan has always had a knack for drama and a tendency to overshare personal issues with inappropriate people at inappropriate times. Growing up, our parents often let her vent to anyone, and it created a pattern where she would throw herself into situations with little regard for consequences. Last year, I got engaged to my fiancé, Adam, 30M. Planning the wedding was exciting, but also incredibly stressful. I wanted a small, intimate event, around 60 guests at a countryside venue. I told everyone from the start that this was a non-negotiable decision and that I hoped people would respect it. Megan had been fine with it, at least on the surface, until a few months before the wedding. One day, out of nowhere, she called crying and told me that she had just found out she couldn't attend the wedding. Apparently, she had a friend who was going through a terrible breakup and she needed to be there for them, and that she couldn't find anyone to cover her shift at work. I tried to reason with her, but she insisted that this was a life-or-death moral obligation. I ended up saying, "Look, it's your choice, but I really wish you could come." She agreed she would try to make it work, but left the tone very vague. As the wedding drew closer, she disappeared from communication for weeks. A week before the event, she suddenly announced she was bringing her boyfriend, her dog, and her friend who had been broken up for months because the friend had no other support. I was shocked. Adam and I had explicitly told everyone that no plus ones were allowed unless previously arranged, and pets were absolutely not allowed. I called her and explained calmly that her friend and her dog could not come. But Megan insisted that I was being unreasonable and that she couldn't let her friend be alone. The wedding day arrived. Megan showed up on time, looking flustered and apologetic, carrying her purse and her dog's carrier. I reminded her once more that the dog couldn't come, and she reluctantly left it in the car. Then, during the ceremony, Megan started whispering loudly to her friend, the one I had told not to come, and kept gesturing to people to take photos. I noticed some guests looking uncomfortable. After the ceremony, she demanded to take photos with every single family member, ignoring Adam and me entirely. Then she cornered my grandmother and started talking about the trauma of her friend's breakup loudly while the rest of the family tried to mingle. The tipping point was during the reception. Megan had been drinking, despite my rules of 1 glass of champagne per person at the table. She got up and started a speech. It was not a toast, but a lecture about mental health, responsibility, and how our family was not supportive enough of friends in need. Half of the guests looked confused, and some looked visibly upset. My mother tried to intervene, but Megan shouted that no one understood the situation and stormed out mid-speech. After the wedding, I was livid. I texted her that I was deeply disappointed, that her behavior was selfish and disruptive, and that it had caused a lot of unnecessary stress. Megan called me crying, saying I was being cold and that I didn't understand the pressure she was under. I explained that she had made a conscious choice to break the rules I'd set, and that it affected not just Adam and me, but the guests too. She apologized vaguely, but didn't really take responsibility. Fast forward a few months, Megan had a personal crisis and asked if she could stay in my apartment for a few weeks while she got back on her feet. Adam and I discussed it. I was hesitant because of everything that happened at the wedding, but I also didn't want to completely abandon my sister. I told her that she could stay only if she followed certain rules. She couldn't bring friends over without asking, she couldn't have pets in the apartment, and she had to respect our schedule. She agreed. The first week was tolerable, but by the second week, she was violating all the rules. She invited 2 friends to stay overnight without telling us, left the kitchen and living room in a mess, and argued with Adam when he asked her to clean up. She also borrowed money from me without asking and then accused me of being unsupportive when I reminded her she needed to pay it back. I finally reached my breaking point and told her she needed to leave. She reacted explosively, yelling that I was ungrateful and unloving and that I treated her like a stranger. She threatened to post on social media about how horrible I was as a sister, which I ignored. I stayed firm, and she left, but our relationship is now completely strained. Some mutual friends are saying that I should have been more compassionate, that Megan was going through a rough patch, and that I should have let her stay. Others side with me, saying that she repeatedly disrespected boundaries and that my home and my wedding are not places to lecture people or break rules. I honestly feel torn. I love my sister, but I also feel like she takes advantage of people's kindness and doesn't respect boundaries. I'm worried that refusing her stay makes me seem heartless, but letting her stay caused a huge mess. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to let my sister stay after she caused problems at my wedding and then broke the rules in my home. This version is 6,745 characters, fits the popular AITA storytelling style, and includes relationship drama, moral ambiguity, and a relatable conflict while leaving readers debating judgment. If you want, I can also create another one with a male protagonist and a workplace conflict, which tend to perform equally well on Reddit. Do you want me to do that next? AITA for refusing to let my sister's friend stay with us after she got kicked out? So I, 17F, live with my parents and younger brother, 14M, in a fairly small 2-bedroom apartment. It's not tiny, but we definitely have limited space, and privacy is practically non-existent. My sister, 21F, lives on her own about 30 minutes away, and she has this friend, let's call her Jen, 20F, who's been staying with her off and on for months because Jen doesn't have a stable living situation. I've met Jen a few times, and honestly, she's a nice enough person, but I've also noticed she can be kind of messy and careless with other people's things. Last week, my sister called me in tears because Jen got kicked out of her apartment after an argument with her roommate. Apparently, she left the place a mess, didn't pay some utilities, and the roommate finally had enough. My sister's immediate reaction was to ask if Jen could stay with us for a few days until she figured something out. At first, I didn't respond because I was stressed. My parents are busy with work, my brother has school and extracurriculars, and I honestly just like having my space. But my sister kept texting me, saying Jen would be super quiet and that it would only be for a few days. I finally said no. I explained that our apartment is small, and having someone I barely know stay here would stress everyone out. I also told her that I've seen how Jen treats other people's spaces, and I don't feel comfortable inviting her into our home. My sister freaked out. She said I was being selfish, that Jen had nowhere else to go, and that I was turning my back on family. She even implied that if I didn't let Jen stay, she would try to sneak her in anyway. My parents, when I told them, said they understood my concerns, but didn't want to step in and tell my sister no because they didn't want a confrontation. After that, things got worse. My sister started posting on social media about family who can't help and made a few comments on my post that were kind of passive-aggressive. Jen also reached out to me directly, saying she didn't want to impose, but that she would really appreciate a place to stay. I told her again that our apartment wasn't suitable for a guest, especially one who might stay for an uncertain amount of time, and that she needed to find somewhere else. She didn't respond after that, which was fine with me, but I could feel my sister's judgment building. The tension with my sister hasn't really calmed down. She's been calling me selfish in our group chat, and our parents keep trying to mediate without really making a decision. My brother has started getting annoyed because every time we all sit down together, the conversation somehow shifts to Jen and how I'm refusing family. Honestly, it's exhausting. I feel like my sister is asking me to take responsibility for a situation I didn't create. I'm supposed to sacrifice my comfort and personal space because of her friend. Here's the thing. I do get that Jen doesn't have a home right now. I've thought about ways I could help without having her stay here. I offered to help her find temporary housing options, helped her update her resume for job applications, and even offered to let her store a few personal items at my place. My sister says that's not enough and that she just needs a place to crash for a couple of nights. I feel like a couple of nights could easily turn into a week or more, and that's way too disruptive for our household. Plus, it would feel like I'm being forced to take responsibility for someone I barely know in a situation I had no part in creating. When I told my sister I was worried about Jen being messy and possibly damaging our stuff, she accused me of judging her unfairly and said I should just trust people more. I tried explaining that trust is built over time, not overnight, and that our space is limited. My parents support me privately, but aren't willing to enforce it. So the fight is mostly between my sister and me. I know I might sound cold, but I also think it's important to set boundaries. I've been having anxiety about this because I don't want a confrontation, but I also don't want to be guilted into letting someone stay here who could cause stress or damage. At the same time, I hate feeling like the bad guy. My sister keeps saying, "Imagine if it were me on the street. Wouldn't you help me?" And I can't stop thinking that she has a point in theory. But my instinct is that letting Jen stay here is not the same as helping my sister, and it would actually create more tension in the family. Since the incident, I've been avoiding my sister because she's constantly bringing it up or trying to guilt me. I'm starting to feel like maybe I'm being unreasonable, but I also don't think I'm asking for much. I just want my apartment to stay my safe space, and I don't want to deal with someone I don't know very well in a stressful living situation. So Reddit, AITA for refusing to let my sister's friend stay with us after she got kicked out? I feel like I'm protecting my boundaries, but I also worry I'm being insensitive. Character count, 6612 if you want. I can write another story in this style with a slightly different dramatic twist to make it even more popular. These stories usually do really well if there's a mix of family conflict and moral ambiguity. Do you want me to do that next? AITA for refusing to apologize to my sister for a prank that got way out of hand. So I, 24M, have a younger sister, Emily, 21F, who has always been, well, let's say dramatically competitive. We have a fairly typical sibling relationship, but over the years, small disagreements often spiral into full-blown arguments because she tends to exaggerate everything. I usually try to avoid confrontation, but a recent incident has left our entire family divided, and now everyone is pressuring me to apologize, even though I don't feel like I should. That's why I need an outside perspective. It all started last month during my birthday weekend. I had invited a few close friends over to my apartment to celebrate. Emily knew about the party because, in previous years, she had always crashed my gatherings, often bringing her own friends and making the night about her instead of me. This year, I made it very clear that it was a small, adult-only event and I wanted some space. She seemed to accept it at first, but I could tell she was annoyed. A few days before the party, I remembered a minor detail that could be exploited for a prank. Emily has a massive fear of snakes, like full-on panic attacks if she even sees a picture. Normally, I wouldn't touch that fear because I know it's serious, but I also remembered that she had been taunting me for months about how boring my birthday celebrations were and how I never did anything exciting. I thought a harmless prank would be funny and a way to get a little revenge. So, I bought a realistic rubber snake and planned to put it in her bedroom drawer as a surprise. My intention was just for her to see it, freak out for a second, and then laugh it off once she realized it was fake. I set it up the night before the party while she was out at work and waited for the perfect moment. The next day, Emily came home earlier than expected. I wasn't around because I was finishing some last-minute party prep, but she went to her room. According to my roommate, she screamed so loudly that it made our neighbors call the police thinking someone was in trouble. She also apparently knocked over a lamp, tore part of the closet door, trying to escape, and somehow got a small paper cut while panicking. When I got back, I found Emily hysterical, my apartment in minor chaos, and my snake lying innocently on the floor. I tried to explain that it was a prank, that it was harmless, and that she would see the joke once she calmed down. But she didn't. She immediately started yelling that I was abusing her and trying to terrorize her for laughs. My friends, who had arrived shortly after, tried to mediate, but she refused to listen. Since then, Emily has been refusing to talk to me and has even told my parents that I intentionally traumatized her. My parents have been on edge because they see it as me being cruel, even though I repeatedly tried to explain that I didn't mean any real harm. My friends, on the other hand, think it's hilarious and told me that Emily is overreacting. They say it's a classic case of sibling payback, and that pranks between siblings are normal. What makes it worse is that Emily has started bringing it up to anyone who will listen. My extended family, neighbors, and even her friends know about it. She has sent texts to mutual friends saying things like, "He deliberately terrified me for fun. I don't feel safe around him anymore." My parents now keep hinting that I should apologize to her, even though I feel like that would make me seem guilty for something that was clearly meant as a joke and didn't involve real danger. I did offer to replace the lamp and fix the closet door, but she refused, saying it wasn't about the material damage. It was about my malicious intent. I suggested we sit down and talk calmly, maybe even do some family mediation, but she's refused every attempt. My friends are egging me on to just leave her to stew because they think apologizing would validate her overreaction. Here's where I get conflicted. I get that I misjudged the intensity of her reaction, and I admit that maybe using a fear-based prank wasn't my brightest idea. But I didn't actually intend to cause serious harm. This wasn't something like hiding her passport or sabotaging her car. It was a rubber snake. She's safe, no lasting injuries, and nothing was destroyed beyond a lamp and a closet panel that I'm happy to replace. Everyone is pressuring me from different directions. My parents keep saying, you should apologize even if you didn't mean it. It's about keeping family peace, while my friends are telling me I shouldn't cave because Emily is blowing it out of proportion. Even our neighbors have started asking questions whenever they see us, which makes me feel even more cornered. So, Reddit, here's my question. AITA for refusing to apologize to my sister for a prank that was meant as harmless fun but ended up causing a massive freak-out on her part? I feel like she's exaggerating and that apologizing would set a precedent that fear-based pranks, no matter how harmless, give her the right to accuse me of trauma. But maybe I'm missing something, and I want to hear an unbiased perspective. I genuinely want our family dynamic to return to normal, but I also don't want to be made to feel like a villain for a prank that got out of hand, but was never meant to be malicious. Has anyone else dealt with a situation where a prank went way too far? How do you navigate the harmless fun versus overreaction line without completely losing your family's trust or looking like a jerk? AITA for refusing to invite my cousin to my wedding after a huge falling out over a family inheritance? I, 27F, have always been close to my cousin, Lena, 26F. We grew up together, went to the same schools, and even shared a summer job when we were teenagers. Our families are tight-knit, and there was always a sense that we were partners in crime during holidays and family vacations. Things started to get complicated when my grandfather passed away 2 years ago. He left behind a fairly sizable inheritance, mostly to my mom and her siblings, but there were a few personal bequests that were meant for me and Lena specifically. At first, everything seemed fine. Lena and I were each given a small sum of money and a few sentimental items, including a couple of watches and some old family jewelry. The problem started when Lena discovered that I had received an item that she wanted badly. It was a pocket watch that had belonged to our great-grandfather. Lena and I had both spent hours as kids imagining who would end up with which items when the time came, and she felt the pocket watch should have gone to her. I told her I wasn't comfortable giving it up because it had a lot of personal significance to me, and my dad had explained why it was important for me to have it. She got extremely upset and accused me of favoritism and manipulation. From there, things escalated quickly. Lena started texting our parents and aunt and uncle nonstop, claiming that I had tricked her out of her rightful inheritance. She even sent me a long, tear-filled message about how I had betrayed our bond and that I was selfish and cruel. I tried to explain calmly that the watch was sentimental, not about money, and that there was no way I could have shared it without breaking a family promise. But she wouldn't listen. Over the next few months, Lena refused to speak to me directly, but she continued to send passive-aggressive messages through family members. She even started a sort of campaign in our extended family, painting me as the villain of the inheritance drama. At one point, my mom pulled me aside and said she was worried Lena was becoming obsessed with the idea that I had wronged her. I tried to be patient, but it started affecting my mental health because I was constantly being accused of something I hadn't done. Fast forward to now. I got engaged last year to my fiancé, Ethan, 29M. We are planning a fairly traditional wedding in a small, picturesque town where most of our family can come. I sent out the initial save the dates and began working on the guest list. My parents, knowing the history, suggested I include Lena because family matters, but I was hesitant. After some thought, I decided that inviting her could either result in a huge scene or make her feel like she won by attending despite everything. I had no desire to risk a massive confrontation at what should be the happiest day of my life. I eventually made the decision not to invite her. I discussed it with my parents, and while they weren't thrilled, they agreed that it might be best for my own peace of mind. I also considered sending her a private note explaining my reasoning, but I realized it would probably just start another argument. As soon as the save the dates went out, my aunt, Lena's mom, called me, furious. She said I was being cruel, that family should come first, and that Lena had suffered enough since the inheritance issue. She kept saying I was overreacting and that I should put aside my feelings for the sake of family unity. I explained my side calmly, but she would not hear it. She even suggested that if I refused to invite Lena, she might not come to the wedding either. Since then, I've gotten mixed messages from other relatives. Some say I'm justified for protecting my mental health and creating a stress-free wedding environment. Others say I'm letting a grudge dictate family dynamics, and that Lena should at least get a chance to attend. A few distant relatives have reached out to ask why Lena isn't invited, which has caused more tension. I feel like I'm stuck between two impossible choices: invite someone who has been toxic toward me and risk a dramatic scene, or protect my mental health and potentially alienate my extended family. My fiancé supports me fully and agrees that Lena's past behavior suggests she could ruin the day if she attends. I haven't communicated directly with Lena since making this decision, and I suspect she's aware because she's been asking family members about the wedding. I honestly don't want a confrontation and would prefer to celebrate without the constant fear of a meltdown or accusations. So, Reddit, AITA for not inviting Lena to my wedding given our history and her behavior over the inheritance issue. AITA for refusing to let my sister's fiancé stay at my house during our family reunion. I, 29F, have always been close to my family, especially my younger sister, Lila, 26F. We grew up in a small town, and after I moved out for college and eventually settled in a different city, family reunions became these rare but important events. Every year, my parents host a big reunion at the house I grew up in, and it's usually a weekend-long thing with extended family, old friends, and plenty of chaos that somehow ends up being fun. This year was different. Lila recently got engaged to a guy named Derek, who I had met a few times at family events. I won't lie, I wasn't exactly thrilled about him. Derek is loud, opinionated, and has this tendency to dominate conversations, even when they're not about him. He also has some peculiar habits, like loudly singing along to TV shows, bringing giant bags of snacks that he insists on reorganizing, and an obsession with telling unsolicited life lessons to anyone within earshot. My family mostly tolerates it because Lila loves him, but I always make sure to give myself a break from his energy. A few weeks ago, Lila called me asking if Derek could stay at my apartment for a few days during the reunion. My parents' house has limited space, and they were worried about him not having anywhere to sleep. I was confused at first because the reunion is just a weekend, and I live about 15 minutes away. I asked why he couldn't stay at a hotel, and Lila said it would be expensive and inconvenient. She then said that my apartment would be perfect because I have a guest room, and it would be cozier. I immediately felt a knot in my stomach. I have a small, meticulously organized apartment that I share with my cat, and I rarely have guests for more than a night. Derek staying for multiple days sounded exhausting. I told Lila that I wasn't comfortable hosting him, explaining that my space is limited and that I'd prefer to keep my apartment for me and my cat. She seemed surprised and said that it's just a couple of days and that it would be a good chance for us to bond with Derek. I reiterated that I really wasn't okay with it, but she kept pushing, asking if I could at least consider it. 2 weeks later, she called again, this time sounding more frustrated. She said that all the nearby hotels were booked or too expensive and that my parents really thought it would be better if Derek stayed with me. I tried suggesting alternatives like Airbnb or staying with a friend, but she dismissed them as impractical. I stood firm, saying my apartment is not an option, and I was honest that I didn't want to deal with the stress of hosting him. When the reunion weekend came, Lila's frustration became more apparent. She kept making pointed comments about my lack of generosity and said things like, "It's just family. Can't you make an exception?" On the first night, she tried to guilt-trip me by saying Derek was really looking forward to getting to know his future in-laws better, and that I was ruining his experience before the wedding. I stayed calm, but reminded her again that my apartment is not a hotel and that I already have my own plans for downtime during the reunion. The tension escalated during the actual reunion. Derek arrived late Friday night because he had stayed at a cheap motel nearby after all. He immediately started loudly talking about how uncomfortable it was to not have a family base for the weekend. Lila gave me this look, and I could tell she blamed me for his mood. Throughout the weekend, she made several passive-aggressive remarks about me being stubborn and selfish for not hosting him, especially during family meals when she would say things like, "I guess some people just don't prioritize family the way they should." Other family members noticed the tension. Some asked me why Derek wasn't staying with me, and I explained honestly that I wasn't comfortable having him in my apartment. A couple of cousins tried to mediate, suggesting compromises like hosting him for just one night, but I refused because I didn't want to set a precedent. Lila, on the other hand, got visibly upset, even crying once in the corner about how I never support her choices. By the end of the reunion, my sister was clearly upset with me. She hasn't spoken to me much since then, and I got a couple of cold texts from my parents saying they wish I had been a bit more accommodating to Derek. I feel like I did nothing wrong. I didn't want a stranger living in my small apartment for days, and I think it's reasonable to set boundaries about my personal space. Hosting him would have caused me stress and disrupted my routine, and I had already offered alternatives. However, Lila and some family members think I overreacted, and that family means making sacrifices, especially for someone about to marry into the family. I'm starting to wonder if I handled it too harshly, but honestly, the thought of having Derek in my apartment for a few days made me feel anxious and trapped. So, AITA for refusing to let my sister's fiancé stay at my place during the family reunion. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after a decade-long fight over our childhood home. I, 28F, have a younger sister, Emily, 26F. Growing up, we lived in a small, inherited house that belonged to our grandmother. After our parents passed away when I was 18 and Emily was 16, the house became a huge source of tension. My parents left it to both of us equally in their will, but it was obvious that Emily always felt like she had more claim to it since she grew up in it more. Her words, not mine. At first, I tried to be reasonable. I offered to let her live there while I rented another place, suggesting we split the costs or even sell it and divide the money. She refused every option, insisting she should inherit it all because she had more sentimental attachment. Things escalated when I found out she had changed the locks and was refusing to let me in unless I paid a hefty monthly rent to live in my own house. I tried mediation through our family lawyer, but she refused to meet. Over the next few years, we stopped speaking. Every attempt I made to communicate was met with silence or passive-aggressive comments through our parents' old friends. I moved to another city, got a good job, and tried to rebuild my life. Emily stayed in the house, posting pictures on social media that made it clear she was living comfortably while I was struggling to settle. It stung, but I tried to ignore it. Fast forward to last year. Emily got engaged to her fiancé, Mark, 27M. I received an invitation to their wedding about 6 months in advance. At first, I thought about attending. I wanted to believe that maybe we could put the past aside, at least for one day. But when I contacted her to RSVP, she didn't respond. I sent a few more messages over the next couple of months, asking for details about the ceremony and whether we could talk before the wedding, but no reply. 2 weeks before the wedding, I got a long text from her mother, my aunt, who is the only relative we both actually speak to, saying that Emily doesn't want me there. According to her, Emily felt that my presence would ruin the joy of her special day because of our unresolved issues. My aunt said she tried to convince her, but Emily refused. I was devastated, but also furious. This wedding is not only about her and Mark, it's also about family. I felt that after more than 10 years of conflict, I should at least be allowed to attend my sister's wedding, even if we didn't get along perfectly. I decided to write Emily a letter, explaining that I understand we have unresolved issues, but I still care about her and would like to witness her happiness on her wedding day. I offered to keep our interaction minimal if she felt uncomfortable, promising to be polite and respectful. She didn't respond. I debated showing up uninvited, but my aunt begged me not to warning that it would likely end badly and probably damage any chance of reconciliation in the future. After a lot of thinking, I decided not to go. I felt like she was punishing me for something that wasn't really my fault, but at the same time, I didn't want to escalate things further. After the wedding, I found out that Emily publicly posted on social media about how her family supported her and made her day perfect. It broke my heart to see my name completely absent, and a few mutual friends implied that I had chosen not to be there, framing me as cold and distant. I haven't spoken to Emily since. Now my parents' friends and some distant relatives are subtly asking me why I didn't attend. I've explained the situation, but I can tell some of them think I'm overreacting or being stubborn. My friends mostly support my decision, but I can't help feeling guilty, especially because Mark seems genuinely nice and I would have liked to celebrate with him. Part of me wonders if I overreacted by refusing to go, but the other part feels like attending would have made me complicit in her refusal to acknowledge my rights as her sister. I keep imagining scenarios where I show up, and she either ignores me entirely or publicly humiliates me in front of everyone. So, AITA for choosing not to attend my sister's wedding after more than 10 years of tension over our family home. I know family is supposed to matter, but at what point does protecting yourself take precedence over being polite? I also worry that this decision might permanently damage our relationship, which is the last thing I want, but I honestly don't know how to approach her after all of this. I'm stuck between wanting to be the bigger person and feeling like I've already done that countless times to no avail. Hey friends, if you enjoy this content, don't forget to like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. We really want to know what you like and what can be improved. What do you think of the video? Are there any topics you'd like to see in future videos? Your feedback really helps us get better. Thanks for being with us. AITA for refusing to lend my sister money for her wedding after she called me selfish. So this is going to be long, but I need to get everything out clearly. I, 27F, have a younger sister, Lily, 24F, and our relationship has been complicated for years. Growing up, Lily was always the golden child in our family, while I was more independent and kind of left to my own devices. I've always tried to be supportive of her, but it feels like she doesn't extend the same effort toward me. Recently, Lily got engaged to her boyfriend, Tom, who she's been with for 3 years. The wedding planning started immediately after the engagement, and she's been extremely stressed about costs. This is where things start getting tricky. Our parents are supportive in the emotional sense, but aren't in a position to help financially, so Lily turned to me. I have a stable job and have saved a fair amount over the years. When she asked me if I could lend her $15,000 for the wedding, I hesitated. I told her honestly that while I do have savings, $15,000 is a huge chunk of money, and I'm not comfortable lending it for something that I don't have any stake in besides being her sister. I offered to help in other ways, help plan the wedding, DIY projects, or even help pick out decorations, but money was a line I wasn't willing to cross. Her reaction was intense. She accused me of being selfish, of not supporting my own sister, and said that families should help each other without hesitation. She even told me that if I really cared about her, I would understand how important this wedding is to her and help without question. I try to stay calm and explain that it's not about not caring about her or her wedding. It's about my financial boundaries and priorities. I also reminded her that I have my own future to think about, including buying a house, paying off student loans, and saving for emergencies. The argument escalated. She started sending me texts at all hours saying things like, "I can't believe you're choosing your money over your sister," and "family is supposed to support each other, but I guess you've always been the selfish one." I tried to respond calmly and respectfully, but the messages kept coming, and I eventually stopped replying. Things got worse when she started talking to our parents about the situation. I think she framed it as me refusing to support her at all. Our parents were sympathetic, but they didn't pressure me to give her the money. They just said they hoped we could resolve it without ruining our relationship. A week later, I found out through mutual friends that she's been telling people I refuse to help because I don't care about her, which isn't true. I've been helping in other ways, planning events, helping make invitations, giving advice on venues, etc., but apparently none of that counts in her mind. To complicate things further, she dropped a bombshell during a family dinner. She said that if I really don't help her financially, she's going to reconsider having me in the wedding party. She said she couldn't have someone so selfish standing next to her on one of the most important days of her life. I was shocked. I've been supportive in every way I could accept financially, and now I'm being threatened with exclusion from the wedding? I tried to explain again that my boundaries on money don't mean I don't care about her. I told her that I was hurt by the accusation that I was selfish and that I've been doing a lot to help her in non-financial ways. She didn't want to hear it. She said, "If you really loved me, money wouldn't be a problem," and stormed off. Now, things are tense. I haven't spoken to her in a few days. I've tried reaching out to our parents for advice, but they're trying to stay neutral. I feel like she's unfairly labeling me as selfish for simply having financial boundaries. I'm also frustrated because I've never made her feel this way before. I've always been supportive, but it seems like no matter what I do, it won't be enough unless I give her money. I'm starting to wonder if I'm really in the wrong here. I mean, I love my sister, and I want her wedding to be amazing, but $15,000 is a huge amount of money for me. I wouldn't be asking her to do anything like this if our situations were reversed. On top of that, being threatened with exclusion from the wedding feels manipulative, and I don't know how to respond without causing more conflict. So, Reddit. AITA for refusing to lend my sister money for her wedding and setting financial boundaries, even though she's calling me selfish and threatening to exclude me from the wedding. AITA for refusing to let my cousin stay at my house after she threw a tantrum about the rules. I, 29F, have a cousin, Megan, 27F, who I've been close to most of my life, but she has a history of being extremely entitled and dramatic. Growing up, I was the responsible one in the family, good grades, steady job, and careful with money, while Megan often acted impulsively and expected people to accommodate her. I've always tried to be supportive, but it's exhausting sometimes. A few months ago, Megan called me in a panic. She had broken up with her boyfriend and claimed she had nowhere to stay. She asked if she could crash at my place for a few weeks until she got back on her feet. I live alone in a 2-bedroom apartment, and while I could technically host her, I have my own routines, responsibilities, and bills. I told her I could help, but there would need to be rules. She would need to pay a small portion toward groceries and utilities, keep the apartment tidy, and respect my schedule. Megan immediately reacted negatively. She said the rules were ridiculous, and that since I'm the older cousin with a stable job, I owe her this. I explained calmly that having someone stay in my apartment isn't a free vacation and that it's reasonable to expect her to contribute to living expenses and follow basic house rules. She accused me of being selfish and unsupportive and started saying that I didn't care about family. After some back and forth, I offered a compromise. She could stay, but I'd need her to respect a few basic boundaries. She agreed verbally, but when she arrived, she immediately started ignoring the rules. She left dirty dishes in the sink for days, invited friends over without asking, and kept me awake late at night by blasting music and having loud phone conversations. I reminded her politely several times about the rules, but she dismissed me, saying she didn't feel comfortable living by someone else's rules. A week in, I had had enough. I told her that I couldn't continue hosting her if she wasn't willing to follow the agreements we made. She reacted explosively, yelling, crying, and accusing me of being cruel. She said I was making her homeless and destroying our relationship. I stood my ground, explaining that I was trying to help her, but that hospitality doesn't mean tolerating disrespect or chaos. The argument escalated over the next few days. Megan started sending passive-aggressive texts, posting on social media about how my cousin refuses to help me in my time of need, and even involving some of her mutual friends to pressure me. Some friends said I was right to set boundaries, while others said I should just let it slide to avoid drama. Megan then demanded that I cover her rent temporarily until she found a new place. I refused, explaining that I was already helping by giving her a place to stay and that it wasn't my responsibility to pay her bills. She called me cold and selfish, saying I hated my family and that I was making her life impossible. At this point, I started limiting contact with her to protect my mental health. Eventually, Megan found another place to stay, but she refused to apologize for her behavior and has since been icy whenever we talk. My parents are upset with me, saying I should have been more accommodating, while some of my friends think I did the right thing by enforcing boundaries. I've offered to help in other ways, helping her pack, assisting with finding apartments, and even contributing a small amount to her moving costs, but she refuses anything short of me completely bending to her demands. I feel torn. On one hand, I genuinely wanted to help my cousin during a difficult time, but I also feel like she tried to manipulate me and guilt-trip me into tolerating behavior I wasn't comfortable with. I don't want to damage my relationship with her permanently, but I also don't want to compromise my living situation or mental health. Reddit. AITA for refusing to let my cousin stay at my house after she threw a tantrum about the rules, even though she was going through a rough time and I initially offered to help. I want to support her, but I also need to maintain boundaries and protect myself. AITA for refusing to let my sister move back in after she caused a huge fight with my fiancé. I, 27F, have been with my fiancé, James, 29M, for about 4 years. We live together in a 2-bedroom apartment, and things have been great overall. A little background. I have a younger sister, Hannah, 24F, who has always had a complicated relationship with me. We grew up really close, but ever since she went to college, things have been strained. She's the kind of person who gets frustrated easily and can be dramatic, and while I usually try to accommodate her, it's exhausting. My parents live in another state, so our family dynamics are mostly managed through calls and occasional visits. Hannah recently had some serious issues at her own place. Her roommate situation fell apart, and she lost her job due to some conflicts at work. She called me in a panic one night, saying she had nowhere to go and was afraid of being homeless. I felt awful for her and offered to let her stay at my place temporarily, knowing it would be a tight squeeze with James and me sharing a small apartment. I made it clear that temporary meant a few weeks at most, but she was desperate and agreed. The first week was okay, if a bit cramped. Hannah was polite, helping around the house and giving me and James some space. But by the second week, things started to shift. She became increasingly messy, leaving her things everywhere and expecting us to clean up after her. She also started making passive-aggressive comments about how James and I spend money, saying we were being selfish for our lifestyle choices. I tried to brush it off, thinking it was just stress, but it was beginning to feel toxic. The real breaking point happened about a month in. I had a rare evening where James and I were hosting a small dinner with a few friends. Hannah had been drinking and was already irritable. During dinner, she made a comment about how James doesn't even help around the house and how I should have chosen someone better. At first, I tried to ignore it, but she kept escalating, criticizing everything from the way we cooked to how we interacted with our friends. Finally, James, who is usually very patient, snapped and told her to stop insulting him in his own home. Hannah went off on a tirade, calling him controlling and saying I was letting him bully me by not defending her. Our friends were awkwardly watching this unfold, and I felt my face burning with embarrassment. After dinner, the argument didn't stop. Hannah stormed into my bedroom, slammed the door, and accused me of betraying her by choosing him over family. I tried to reason with her, explaining that we couldn't continue like this if she wasn't willing to respect boundaries, but she refused to listen. She left the apartment for the night, saying she needed to think about things. The next morning, she called my parents to tell them about the fight. My parents called me upset, saying I was being harsh and that I should be more supportive of my sister. They seemed to believe that since she had nowhere else to go, I had an obligation to keep her in my home, regardless of how she treated me and James. I tried explaining the situation, but my mom kept saying that I needed to prioritize family and stop letting James control you. I was furious because I felt like they were dismissing months of toxic behavior just because she was their child. After that call, I told Hannah that she could no longer stay with us. I offered to help her find a temporary shelter, a friend's couch, or even a short-term rental, but I said our apartment wasn't an option anymore. She reacted extremely badly, accusing me of being selfish, cruel, and choosing my fiancé over my own sister. She also blocked me on social media and told some mutual friends that I had kicked her out for no reason, which led to a few of them texting me to ask if I was being unreasonable. James is fully supportive of my decision, but I can't shake the feeling that maybe I am being harsh. I genuinely try to help her, but her behavior has been damaging to our relationship and my mental health. My parents keep pushing me to let her back in just for a little while and to try harder, but I feel like giving in will only make things worse. I have not spoken to Hannah since that argument, and I feel like it's probably for the best, but I also feel a pang of guilt. I want to support her, but I also need to protect my relationship and my home environment. I'm worried that I'm going to be seen as the villain for setting firm boundaries, but at the same time, I feel like I've been more than fair. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to let my sister stay with us after she caused a huge fight with my fiancé and behaved poorly in our home. AITA for refusing to let my stepbrother's fiancé plan my mother's 60th birthday without me. So, this is a long one, and I've been stewing over it for months now, so I need to get this out. I, 25F, have a stepbrother, let's call him Jake, 28M, who's been in my life since I was about 12. My dad married his mom when I was in middle school, and while we weren't super close growing up, we had a decent sibling relationship. Nothing crazy, just occasional hangouts and holidays. Fast forward to now, and things have gotten complicated. Jake has been dating this girl, Mia, 26F, for about a year. I've met her a handful of times, and I can say honestly that I don't hate her, but there's something about her that rubs me the wrong way. She has a very controlling vibe, and honestly, she seems to love being the center of attention. For context, my mom, 57F, is one of the most humble and quiet people I know. She never likes big, flashy celebrations and tends to downplay things like birthdays. I've always been very close to my mom, and we talk about literally everything. She's always said she hates extravagant nonsense, but doesn't mind a small family dinner or casual outing. Here's where things started getting messy. Around a month ago, Jake told me that Mia had taken over planning my mom's 60th birthday. At first, I thought he meant she was helping with logistics or something simple, but it turned out she was basically designing the whole party from the ground up: theme, guest list, catering, decorations, and even a live band. The kicker? She wanted the party to be a huge surprise for my mom, and she explicitly said I shouldn't be involved because it would ruin the fun. I was immediately uncomfortable. First, because my mom hates surprises, especially big ones. She doesn't like being the center of attention, and I knew this would stress her out. Second, because this is my mom's milestone birthday, and I felt like it should be a collaborative effort between her children, not dictated by a fiancé who hasn't been in the family that long. I tried talking to Jake about it, saying, hey, maybe we can tone this down and include mom in some of the decisions, but he brushed me off, saying Mia had a vision and mom would love it. I told him I disagreed and that I didn't want to stand by while they potentially made her birthday miserable. So I made a call. I sat down with my mom and asked her directly what she wanted. She was honestly relieved I asked. Turns out she had no idea about this elaborate plan and had no desire for it. She said she was perfectly happy with a small dinner at her favorite restaurant with immediate family and a couple of close friends. Nothing fancy, nothing overwhelming. I immediately told Jake and Mia that this is what mom wanted. Mia was furious. She accused me of ruining the surprise and trying to sabotage her plans, while Jake looked visibly uncomfortable but didn't say much. I stuck to my guns. I told them both that while I understood they meant well, mom's wishes came first, and she didn't want the big, flashy thing Mia had planned. I even offered to help organize the dinner, so it could still be special but simple, and my mom could enjoy it without stress. Mia threw a fit, saying I was being dramatic and controlling, and that Jake should side with her since they were planning to get married soon. The fallout has been intense. Jake hasn't spoken much to me since the confrontation, although my mom has been incredibly supportive. Mia has been passive-aggressive at every family gathering, and it feels like there's a constant tension whenever she's around. Some relatives have called me an overreacting control freak because they think I should have let Mia plan the party as she wanted. Others agree that mom's wishes should come first and say Mia overstepped. Honestly, I feel like I did the right thing. My mom's birthday is about her, not about showing off or impressing people. I just can't shake the feeling that I might be overstepping by standing up to Jake and Mia, who were trying to do something nice. I never wanted to cause drama, I just wanted my mom to have a day she would actually enjoy. So Reddit, AITA for refusing to let my stepbrother's fiancé plan my mom's birthday and sticking to what my mom actually wanted. AITA for refusing to host my sister's wedding after she insulted my parenting. I, 34F, have always been the more practical sibling in my family, while my sister, Emily, 31F, has always been a bit dramatic. Growing up, I got married young, had kids, and settled into a busy but manageable life, while Emily chased her career, traveled a lot, and threw herself into relationships that never lasted long. We've always had a kind of love-hate relationship. We care about each other, but there's a lot of tension beneath the surface. About 2 months ago, Emily announced she was engaged. At first, I was genuinely happy for her. She and her fiancé, Mark, seemed like a good match, and I wanted to support her. But things started going downhill the moment she asked me to host the wedding at my house. My husband, Jake, 36M, and I live in a modest but comfortable suburban home. We have 2 kids, one who's 5 and one who's almost 2. My house isn't massive. We have a backyard, but it's not the kind of space you'd imagine for a formal wedding with over 100 guests. When Emily asked if we could host it, I politely told her that while I loved her and wanted to support her, our house really wasn't suitable for a wedding that size. I offered alternatives like helping her find venues or even hosting a smaller rehearsal dinner at our place, but I made it clear that a full wedding was not feasible. This is when things got ugly. Emily immediately got defensive. She told me that it was so typical of me to refuse her because I always put my kids and comfort first. She said that I was being selfish and that if I really loved her, I'd find a way to make it work. I reminded her that hosting a wedding for over 100 people in a house with 2 toddlers running around was neither practical nor safe, and suggested that maybe her vision of a backyard wedding was better suited for a park or someone else's larger property. She doubled down and accused me of being jealous that she could throw a beautiful wedding, and that my life was boring and small. At this point, I was frustrated but tried to stay calm. I explained that our financial situation and space limitations made a large wedding impossible. I also pointed out that her fiancé's family had the means to rent a venue, and it made more sense for them to host. Emily responded by bringing up our parents, who she said would probably pressure me into letting her do it anyway, and implied that I was rude for even mentioning my kids in the discussion. Things escalated when Emily made a comment that I honestly wasn't expecting. She said, "It's not like your kids are that cute anyway. Maybe if they were better behaved or didn't make your house smell like chaos, I'd consider it." I was floored. I've never heard my sister say something so cruel about my children. I lost my temper and told her that I would not host her wedding, period, and that any further discussion about it would have to be done in a way that didn't involve insulting my family. Since then, Emily has been texting me nonstop, calling me selfish and immature, saying that I'm ruining her dream wedding, and implying that I'm choosing my children over her happiness. I blocked her for a few days to cool off, but now my parents are involved, asking me to reconsider and saying I'm being unreasonable. I explained to them that I was happy to help in other ways, but I will not host her wedding, especially after being insulted. My parents think I'm overreacting and that I should apologize to Emily. Honestly, I feel like she crossed a line. I would never ask her to host a huge party in her apartment with no kids and expect her to bend over backward. But she seems to think that because I have children, I should automatically put them aside for her dream wedding. I'm not sure if I'm being too rigid or if she's genuinely in the wrong here. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to host my sister's wedding after she insulted my parenting and my children. AITA for refusing to let my cousin's kids stay at my house after a family emergency. This all started about a month ago. I, 16F, live with my mom, stepdad, and little brother in a medium-sized house. It's not huge, but we have enough space for our family to live comfortably. My cousin, 14M, and his younger sister, 10F, live about 2 hours away with their parents. They're decent kids, I guess, but honestly, I've always found them kind of exhausting. My cousin is always loud and hyper, and his sister has a tendency to cry over the smallest things. They're not bad kids. They just have very different energy from what I'm used to at home, and sometimes it's overwhelming for me. Anyway, last month my aunt and uncle had an emergency come up. They had to leave town unexpectedly due to a medical issue with a relative. They reached out to my mom and asked if my cousin and his sister could stay with us for a few days. My mom, being a very generous person, immediately said yes. I didn't have a chance to voice my feelings because the conversation happened while I was at school. My mom just assumed it would be fine, and honestly, she kind of guilt-tripped me after I got home because she said, "They're your family. It's not forever, just a few days." When they arrived, I realized very quickly that this was going to be way more stressful than I anticipated. My cousin would constantly shout in the living room, run around, and at one point even tried to do parkour over our furniture, which scared me and my little brother. His sister cried multiple times because she couldn't figure out how to open a snack package or because my mom wouldn't let her use my laptop. Every time I tried to retreat to my room to have some peace, they would follow me, asking for snacks, help with games, or just talking nonstop. I tried to be patient for the first day, thinking maybe it was just a short adjustment period, but by the second day, I was completely drained. I told my mom I was feeling overwhelmed and asked if we could set some boundaries like quiet times or limiting how much they came into my room. My mom said that it was an emergency and I should just deal with it for a few days. I felt like my feelings didn't matter at all, but I tried to keep it together. By the third day, things got worse. My cousin somehow got my little brother to join him in a water fight in the kitchen. It was a huge mess, and my mom yelled at me for not supervising properly, even though I had been in my room the whole time because I had homework and needed a break. I snapped. I told my mom that I didn't feel comfortable having them stay anymore and that I couldn't handle the chaos. She got visibly upset and said I was being selfish and dramatic, and that family comes first. She even mentioned that my aunt and uncle were counting on us to help and that I was ruining everything. I decided to call my aunt and uncle privately to explain how stressed I was. I told them that my cousin and his sister were exhausting me and that I didn't feel able to manage them in addition to my regular responsibilities at home. My aunt was understanding at first and said she would try to make other arrangements, but then my uncle chimed in via text, basically saying I needed to step up for family and that I was being unreasonable. After that, my mom tried to pressure me even more. She said I had to apologize to the kids for being mean and act like everything is fine. I refused. I tried explaining that I was not being mean. I was just overwhelmed and needed space. My mom called me ungrateful and said I was not acting like a family member. This argument went on for hours. Eventually, I told her I would let my cousin and his sister stay one more night, but after that, they had to leave or I would involve my aunt and uncle in finding another solution. The next day was chaotic as usual, but I kept my distance. My cousin and his sister left 2 days later, but the aftermath has been tense. My mom has been cold toward me, saying things like, "You really disappointed me," and "Not everyone would refuse to help family like that." My little brother keeps asking why I was so mean to the cousins, and I feel guilty even though I know I wasn't intentionally being mean. I just needed boundaries. I've talked to a few friends about this, and they say I was completely justified, but my mom's side of the family thinks I was rude and selfish. My aunt did end up finding someone else to watch the kids when they needed it again, and she later texted me saying she understood why I felt overwhelmed and that she appreciated me being honest. My mom, however, is still upset. So AITA for refusing to let my cousin and his sister stay at my house after the first couple of days and setting boundaries because I was overwhelmed. I love my family, but I also feel like my mental health and personal space should matter too. AITA for refusing to host my friend's bridal shower after she tried to control every detail and insulted me when I set boundaries. I, 32F, have been friends with Claire, 31F, since college. We've always been close. She's outgoing, dramatic, and a bit controlling at times, and I'm more reserved and organized. Despite our differences, we've always had a strong friendship, so when she got engaged last year, I was genuinely excited for her. I also work in event planning, so she immediately asked me to help organize her bridal shower. At first, I was happy to help. I suggested we start by deciding on a budget, a guest list, and a location, since those are the basics for any successful event. I offered to help coordinate decorations, catering, and invitations. Claire seemed agreeable, but almost immediately she started micromanaging everything and trying to dictate how I should handle even the smallest details. She wanted me to order decorations from specific stores she liked, use a very limited color palette, and even insisted on making me redo invitations multiple times because she didn't feel the vibe was right. I tried to accommodate her reasonable preferences, but I also have my own standards for planning and a lot of other commitments at work. When I push back on unreasonable requests, like spending hours on custom centerpieces she found online or changing a venue I'd already booked because she had a different feeling about it, she started being passive-aggressive. She would make comments like, "I guess I should have planned this myself if you're going to make it so hard, and maybe I picked the wrong person to help." Things escalated when she started dictating who could and couldn't attend. A few of my friends were invited because Claire didn't know them well, and she didn't want them there. I explained that the guest list was partially set by mutual friends and family, and removing people at this stage would be awkward. She got angry and said I didn't respect her wishes and that I was turning her shower into my own event. A week later, she sent me a long list of rules for the day of the shower, where each person should sit, what gifts could be opened first, who could take photos, what games were acceptable, and even what time she wanted the cake served. She demanded I memorize all of this and follow it exactly. I told her I could follow reasonable instructions, but some of her rules were too detailed and unrealistic. That's when she accused me of being lazy and unsupportive and said maybe I shouldn't be organizing anything at all. I tried one last compromise. I would host a shower at my place, handle basic logistics, and make sure everything ran smoothly, but I wasn't going to micromanage every single detail. I also said that if she wanted total control, maybe she should host it herself. She completely lost it, calling me selfish, ungrateful, and saying that I was ruining what was supposed to be the happiest day of her life. Eventually, I told her I couldn't host a shower under these conditions. I explained that I wanted to help and support her, but I couldn't sacrifice my mental health and time to accommodate unreasonable demands. She accused me of abandoning her and started posting on social media about how I was the worst friend ever and couldn't be trusted with anything important. Some mutual friends reached out, asking me if I was overreacting or if I should just give in to keep the peace. Since then, Claire has barely spoken to me. A few mutual friends have mentioned that she's upset and that some family members are taking her side, saying I should have been more flexible. I've offered to help in other ways, like attending the shower, helping set up decorations the day before, or assisting with gift organization, but she refuses anything that doesn't involve me giving her complete control. I feel torn. On one hand, I really do want to support her and be there for this milestone in her life. On the other hand, I can't compromise my own boundaries or allow myself to be insulted and guilt-tripped into doing something that makes me miserable. I also worry about what giving in would mean for future situations. Claire has a history of being demanding, and I don't want to set a precedent where she can push me around. Reddit. AITA for refusing to host my friend's bridal shower after she tried to control every detail and insulted me when I set boundaries. I want to support her, but I also need to protect my mental health and respect my own limits. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after she insulted my late mother. I, 27F, have always had a complicated relationship with my older sister, Clara, 32F. Growing up, we were close at times, but mostly we were competitive and critical of each other. Our parents divorced when I was 12, and my mom passed away when I was 19. Losing her was incredibly hard on me, and it shaped a lot of how I handle family conflicts. Clara, on the other hand, seemed to process grief very differently. She went back to focusing on school and social life quickly, and while I tried to stay close to her, our approaches often clashed. Clara got engaged about a year ago. From the beginning, I tried to be supportive because I wanted our relationship to improve. I helped her with some of the planning, gave opinions when asked, and even offered to host a small bridal shower at my apartment. Early on, I noticed she would occasionally make comments about our family in ways that I found hurtful, but I tried to brush them off. About 3 months ago, we were talking on the phone, and she mentioned that she wanted the wedding to feel perfect and that she was worried about my presence making things awkward. I asked her what she meant, and she said she didn't want me bringing the dead weight of mom's emotional baggage. I froze because I couldn't believe she had just said that. I told her that was incredibly hurtful, and she laughed it off, saying, "I'm just saying, your mom always made things dramatic, remember?" I reminded her that my mom had passed away, and it wasn't really funny. Clara said she was just joking and changed the topic. I let it go at that moment, thinking maybe she didn't realize how cruel it was. But over the next few weeks, she kept making similar comments in passing to family members when I wasn't around. My dad called me once to tell me he overheard Clara telling a cousin that my mom ruined family events with her constant tears and sad stories. I confronted Clara over text after that, asking her to stop talking about mom that way. She responded that she didn't mean it and that I was being oversensitive. Fast forward to last weekend. Clara called me to discuss the seating arrangement. She asked if I would be okay sitting at a specific table away from her fiancé's family because it might be awkward if you're sad all the time. I was furious and asked her why she couldn't just treat me normally. She said, "You know how you get? I don't want to stress everyone out on my wedding day. Just sit quietly and everything will be fine." I told her I couldn't do that. I said I loved her, but I could not be around people mocking my mother and minimizing my grief. Clara then got extremely defensive. She accused me of being selfish and making everything about myself, saying she had the right to have the wedding she wanted. I told her I understood that, but I also had the right to refuse to participate in something where my mother's memory was being disrespected. The conversation ended with Clara yelling that I was overreacting and that she didn't care if I came. After that call, I decided not to attend the wedding. I informed my dad and other family members who were close to me about my decision. Some were supportive, but others, including my uncle, said I was making the situation worse and that I should just grin and bear it. Clara found out I officially RSVP'd no through my mother's closest friend, who was helping her with the wedding. When Clara confronted me again, she said I was ruining her big day, making it about me, and I was being dramatic. She also accused me of holding a grudge for something that happened years ago. I tried to explain it wasn't about holding a grudge. It was about not wanting to be insulted in front of a crowd and disrespected on her most important day. She told me if I truly loved her, I would put her happiness above my feelings. Now, my family is split. Some people understand my reasons and say I have every right to refuse, but others, especially my cousins, think I'm being childish and selfish. My parents are frustrated because they don't want the family divided, and they keep asking me to reconsider. I feel incredibly torn. I love my sister, and I want our relationship to be good, but I also can't just sit silently while she mocks my mom in front of friends and family. I don't want to cause a scene or escalate things further, but I also don't feel like attending would be emotionally safe for me. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after she insulted my late mother? Character count 6,584 if you want. I can also craft a second, equally long story with a slightly different family conflict angle that could go viral on Reddit. It would be in the same style, but with a dramatic twist. Do you want me to do that? Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss new videos also. Leave a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Your support and engagement mean a lot to me. See you in the next video.